Some valuable information and insight into the police department and how we currently are structured. In 2018 census, the estimate was we had 21,200 residents and almost 12 square miles of jurisdiction to cover. And we have 35 sworn officers is the approved level for the police department. We're currently at 34. We've got one opening, and we're currently civil service process to hire one more officer. We got 3 civilian employees. In 2019, we responded to 21,210 calls for service. Those are calls that come in through the dispatch center that our officers will respond to in some fashion. Most of those will be them going to the residence or the business. Some of them could be a phone call that they make for information, and some of those could be squad assists. With the heroin epidemic that's gone on across the country, we didn't used to respond with the squads to EMS runs, but as a result of the heroin overdoses, there's been times where their safety was a concern. So now, every time the EMS is dispatched out, an officer is dispatched out to assist them. And they will call us off if it's a medical condition and say that an officer's not needed. So again, those are the number of calls for 19, and it'll likely be in that area again. And this year, I don't anticipate it going up significantly, but I haven't seen anything to indicate it'll go down either. So our patrol shifts are 12-hour shifts, and our officers work 8-hour schedules, or 12-hour shifts, but an 8-week schedule, meaning they work day shift for 8 weeks from 6A to 6P, and then they'll go to night shift and work 6P to 6A. So they rotate that every 8 weeks. To be a well-rounded officer, to get to know your community that's out during the day, because they differ from the community that's out during the night. So it sounds horrible when it comes to sleep schedule, but it really isn't that bad. It's we actually use that schedule as a recruiting tool, because one of the benefits of a 12-hour shift is an officer gets every other weekend off, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. In the law enforcement and firefighting professions, it's unheard of to get a weekend off for your first 15 years or so, because of seniority and how scheduling goes. And even after that period of time, you may not get a weekend off. So this schedule, you're guaranteed every other weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. So it helps out with the officers getting rest up, and then also spending quality time with family members. The department structure talks about the chief of police. We have 3 deputy chiefs. One of them is over the patrol section. One is over the investigative section, and also manages our evidence room. And then a third one is the administrative deputy chief that takes care of like a lot of our grant writing and administrative staff and records keeping and public records requests, things of that nature. So we have 22 patrol officers that work the road. 22 in the police officer rank. That's not a lieutenant or a deputy chief, but 22 officers work the road. And we have 1 community officer that's new this year, school resource officer. And then we had 3 general investigators. One of those is assigned to narcotics investigations. And then again, the 3 civilians, 2 of them are secretaries, and we have a records clerk. And this is just an organizational chart of the people that I previously mentioned in the last slide with our rank. When we talk about accomplishments, last year, as I mentioned about the chief of police transition, Chief Jameson, he retired effective July 1st of last year, but his last day of work was June 1st. So he worked through May, and we started the process in February to find his replacement, and it was like, I believe March 7th was when it was announced that I would be named the next chief of police. So for the first half of the year, it was still his department, and the second and a half I inherited everything. And I got to say that Chief Jameson left the police department in very good standing, on solid ground, with no major issues to deal with, and as a result, it made the transition go pretty easy. But in doing so, he's winding down his career as the chief, and I am getting prepared for that. Again, that transition caused, there's always a delay in progress, I guess, if you will. But some of the major accomplishments that we did, very expensive and then also beneficial to not only the officers but the community, was we implemented new WatchGuard in-car camera systems in each patrol car. We've always had in-car cameras. We had microphones that the officers would wear, just audio. But now with these new in-car camera video systems, they also have a high-definition body camera on. So every officer now responds to a call, they have a body camera on, and it's recording at all times on a call for service. And then we also replaced our in-house video surveillance system, which includes the perimeter of the government complexes under video surveillance, but it also deals with the replacement of all of our interview rooms have to be recorded, and our lobby, etc. So we replaced those, and then as a result of my promotion, we had a promotional process for a lieutenant rank, and that was Jeremy Weber was promoted to the rank of lieutenant last year. I want to point out the department website to some people. They may not know. Thank you. I apologize. I've had a cold for the last couple of weeks, so I'm losing my voice, and I'm eating cough drops like it's candy. So the website, a couple things of interest to the public could be, you can get on the website, click on a map, the community crime map, and you can put your house in there, and you can select whether it be a theft offense or an assault, but you can pick whatever crimes of interest are you, and you can put a perimeter around your house, and it'll pop up every complaint that's been filed in your neighborhood on there through LexisNexis. And it's pretty interesting just to see what's going on. You can see it for the whole city, or you can get as narrow as your house. And it's any crime that is reported to us will pop up on that map. And it's pretty simple to navigate it and use it. You can also get on there and see what the city ordinances are. You can sign up for web check fingerprinting if someone's in with our opening. They can get on there for a job opportunity, and the application's on there. So, and down here at the bottom is our submit a tip. You click that link if you got a tip of suspicious activity in the neighborhood that you would like us to look at, or you can call into the Crime Stoppers hotline too, which is the 615 tip. So the website, you can pretty much do anything you need to do with the police department, or call the dispatch center to talk to us. So some of these I'll cover briefly here. The police records secretaries, you know, obviously they maintain all of our records from police reports that the officers take. They put those out for public records requests, and they make sure that all the data entries in there and everything goes in. So the patrol operations, you know, we respond to calls for service, and these are calls that come into dispatch that we don't control. Obviously, we don't know when they're going to come in or what the nature of them is going to be, but obviously the officers will respond to these various types of complaints and deal with them, and to include assisting other police departments and sheriff's department, etc. But the self-initiated activity that listed up here is like traffic enforcement. You know, some of those things, you know, a traffic stop is self-initiated. An officer observes a violation, they have to handle that. And sometimes, you know, with those things, most of the time you can control when you're going to make a traffic stop, and when, where, and stuff like that. The citizen contacts, follow-ups, vacation house checks are a popular thing. If you're going on vacation out of the area, you can contact the police department and let them know the dates that you're going to be gone, and whether somebody be checking on your house or lights will be on, and they'll put it on a record, and each day an officer will walk around your house to make sure everything's still secured and no issues are coming up. So, and that's something that you can contact the secretaries for, to get your name or your residence put on the list. We have some that are on there for 6 months out of the year. We have others that'll be a week or two. So it really doesn't matter the length of time you're going to be gone. If you're interested in having somebody check it out, then give us a call. Our detective operations, you know, general investigations, they typically handle the more serious crimes that require a great deal more time and effort to investigate, such as the homicides, sexual assaults, robberies, burglaries, and such. And they do that through interviews and interrogations. They do a lot of talking to individuals, so they get quite a bit of experience in negotiation, or sometimes it is a negotiation, but most of the time the interview and the interrogation process. Collect the evidence during search warrants, make arrests. They do surveillance around town, things of that nature. So again, these are more serious crimes that require more interest to the community and the department to solve. So they spend a great deal of time on those investigations. I mentioned we have 3 general investigators. One of them is assigned to narcotics. And he also does vice crime, so the trafficking and drugs. One thing that I am big on is the drug enforcement, and if you've noticed since June of last year, we've been pretty aggressive in taking down some houses in the city for drug trafficking, and that's going to continue. But in an effort to do that, we had to add, prior to me being the chief of police, we only had 2 general investigators, and I reassigned somebody in there, so we got 3 now, along with the lieutenant, so there's 4 total. And that wasn't a new position, it wasn't a new officer, it wasn't a new manpower, it was just a reassignment. So again, and then they deal with the prostitution, pornography, which we do have a great deal of that in the community as well. The most recent one that comes to mind is the Sunset massage parlor was a prostitution ring. So those guys would be responsible for investigating that. Our tactical response team, we've got 8 officers on the department that are a member of the tactical response team. They get a great deal more training and they have a great deal more equipment to handle these high-risk situations. There are a number of times when officers or detectives will do a search warrant at a residence, but if there's any indication that the individual inside has been known for violence or known to have weapons, then we'll use our tactical response team to secure the residence, and then they clear, and the detectives will take over and searching it or making whatever arrest is necessary. You'll see down at the bottom the big piece of equipment we got here. We call it a tactical rescue vehicle. It's an armored vehicle. It's of interest to note that we got very little money into that thing. We got it from surplus military supplies, and a lot of people will ask about the need for it. Well, if we ever had a situation, whether it be at a school or a business or a residence, that required us to rescue somebody that's been injured by an active shooter or whatever act of violence, we can put that vehicle in between them and the suspect, and it's armored, so that we can get through there, get them out, and get them in a safe area to get them the treatment they need. With this vehicle, again, we got it for free from the surplus with military. To get a Bearcat, which is a Bearcat is a smaller version of this that's used for civilian police departments, etc. Those things can range from $200,000 to $300,000 each. So Dayton Police Department has one. Sydney's trying to get one, but we have this one that does the exact same thing, just a lot cheaper. So that's the reason why we have that piece of equipment. And we've actually had 2 call-outs where we had to utilize it for safety reasons. So it's of value to us. As I mentioned before, in 2020, we started this in late December, early January. We used to have a DARE program, or a school resource officer program, in the city of Piqua schools, and we had an officer at the junior high, the high school, then one that was assigned to all the elementary schools. And when the economy took a turn for the worse several years ago, those positions had to be eliminated to put those officers on the road, because we weren't authorized to rehire to replace people. So we had to use them to answer calls for service. And over time, obviously, the economy recovered. We got our manpower back up to where it's at now. But we haven't started putting people back in the school yet. So that's what I've started this year. That resource officer responds to all the schools. And then has just recently started teaching DARE again, drug abuse resistance education. So the hope is to get at least one more resource officer in the schools, because one guy can't do all the schools alone, with the facilitating programs and assisting with calls or assisting with whatever situation that they need to be there for. So again, hopefully we'll get a second one here in time. And then I mentioned previously about adding another general investigator to the detective section to assist with the investigation. And again, that was based on the need and the desire to ramp up our efforts in drug enforcement and investigation of crimes to result in prosecution, so we can take these people off the street. So and one of the big things really is huge in our department right now is an emphasis on training and a succession plan, because currently 3 out of the 4 of us up in management are eligible for retirement if we chose to. And when you look at our department, we have 26 officers that are in the patrolman rank. Of those 26, 13 of them have less than 5 years of experience. So 50% of our department has less than 5 years. Of those 13, 8 of them have less than 3 years. So we are a very young department right now, and that's a great thing to have, it really is. But we have to get them trained. Normally when you hire 1 or 2 people every year or so, you got plenty of time to get them in through the various schools that help them do their job. And right now it's a challenge because you can't send 8 people to a school at the same time because somebody's got to work the road. So we are putting a big emphasis on getting people into the training, getting them prepared for the future to replace those of us that retire eventually. So those are some of the big efforts that we'll put towards this year. I talked about the community resource officer and school resource officer position, and he's going to be busy, and that's why we need another person there eventually. But he facilitates the DARE and Eddie Eagle programs in the elementary schools. He does do the right thing when somebody gets nominated. Careful Corners is for kindergarten students, our students going into kindergarten that we do. NetSmarts is an internet smart training for junior high students so that they know that if you put a picture on the internet, it never goes away. So be careful with what you put out there. Project Lifesaver is for somebody of any age that has a cognitive disease to where they're prone to wandering. We can put a GPS band on their wrists or their ankles depending on what their level of understanding is. And with that, if they wander away from their home, we can then, if the parents or guardian or whoever's taking care of the individual calls us, we can send several officers out that have a GPS tracking device to where we can locate that individual. So right now we have about 6 people in the city of Piqua that currently have those, are in the Project Lifesaver program. The Miami County Sheriff's Department, we're in partnership with them on it. They have probably 10, 15 people on it. So again, it's a GPS tracking device that we can put on kids with Alzheimer's patients, kids with various ailments that, again, if they're known to wander, then we can put it on there. So it's kind of a neat program. And then, of course, we'll still continue to do our Halloween trick-or-treat. National Night Out is a big project that we do. Coffee with a Cop. I talked about Submit a Tip. Excuse me. The HEART program is our heroin addiction response team. If we get somebody that overdoses on opioids, we'll send out packets of information to them that gives them resources to get help. It also, we can get them in connection with Piqua Compassion Network, Miami County Recovery Council. We have a faith-based member on that team, and just gives them a number of resources and people to talk to hopefully make the decision to get well. So we continue that program as well. That is really, in a nutshell, as quick as I went through it, probably a little quicker than I should have, but can open it up now for just anyone that may have a question about the police department or want additional information.
Mine is DARE. It used to be 5th grade.
Yes, still is.
Still is. Now, do you anticipate going to the other grade levels for some of that?
At this time, I do not.
Okay.
But I don't know ultimately where it'll go. But in my career, I taught elementary there up at the Sheriff's Department. Then when I came here, I eventually, after about 5 years, I was teaching it at the high school, and then later on at the junior high for a year. And the 5th graders really take a hold of that program and run with it. And then the junior high, they're kind of on the fence whether they want to do that again or not. And the high school, they just tune out. And I think part of that is because in the high school, it's a 10-day program, and it's just a lot to throw at them. I mean, they do know quite a bit more at that age, and for us to come in and just keep hammering them with it, I'm not sure the value of that. The 5th grade DARE was recently, they revamped it, redeveloped it with scientific-based information versus just let's have fun. So it's a lot more effective, and again, it's not just about resisting drugs, it's about building relationships and proper behavior and things of that nature. So it's a wide range of information that they get. And even though it's focus towards the 5th grade. We still do, like, we'll get with the kindergarten kids like once or twice a year, in the 1st grade to 4th grade as well. And when they're in the junior high, they do, we used to do the GREAT program. We used to get in there and teach stuff, and hopefully we can get back into that too. But it won't be DARE, more than likely. But we'll see how that
So
progresses.
how long is the DARE program?
It's 10, for 5th grade, it's 10 lessons.
10.
10 to 12 lessons.
Okay.
Yep.
I would say that the 5th grade, you'd be about 11 years old. That is such an impressionable age. I can remember when I was in the Scouts, and I can still remember the Scout law, and the motto, and all that. It's just what you learned during that time just really sticks with you.
Yeah, and that's what we find is, you know, when you get in there and you cover all the material, they do take some of that away and remember it for a long time. But the relationship that officer builds with those kids, it goes a long ways too. And you know, I can speak from at the high school level. I don't remember how many years ago that was, but some of the kids now that were in the DARE when I was teaching out there, I see them on the street and it's all, hey, there's my DARE officer. And it's like, you look at me, man, I don't know who this kid is, because you have 200 plus kids a year and they remember you, they don't forget. So it's kind of neat.
That's a good point. I will tell you too, the things that I was aware of as a 5th grader are very different than our kids are aware of now. So the things that they're aware of, I knew when I was a junior, maybe, or something like that. So the fact that we're getting them at that age is really probably the most effective time in their lives, because they're getting on the verge or they're ready to make some real serious decisions about drugs, alcohol, sex, violence, relationships, all those things. So
Yeah, and that's courtesy of your YouTube channels and your TikTok, and even like Xbox or PlayStation games where they play with somebody that they have no idea who it is. It could be anyone around the world. And one of my daughter plays, who is a 5th grader, is Minecraft, and it's an innocent game of building stuff. But I found out that the kids get into those programs, they build houses, schools and everything else, and they role play in there. And you hear some of the stuff going on, you're like, no, we're not doing that. So they get exposed to some stuff pretty quick, and it could be because it's another 5th grader that knows more than they do, or it could be a 50-year-old man who's posing as a 12-year-old trying to talk to these kids. So, you know, so it is important to get to them when they're impressionable and make them understand that this seems pretty innocent and I know you're having fun, but the reality is that may not be who you think it is. So.
Can you share careful, go ahead. I was going to say, will you just share Careful Corners with everybody? I think we all know what it is, but.
Yeah, it's for kids that are going into kindergarten. It's a 5-day program for, I think it's like 2.5 hours a day or 3 hours a day. And they get bicycle safety, they get exposed to police department, basically about safety issues, crosswalks, stop signs, red lights, etc. And then the fire department comes in and does a day. To be honest with you, I don't know all the 5 days of what they get, but it's the Piqua Electric goes in there and gives a presentation. I'm trying to think of who else goes in there. I'm sure the schools, they're in there. So I'm trying to think of who the 5th day would be. But each day it's a different topic, and then they rotate through stations and get some training and whatnot. So it's a pretty extensive little program for a kindergarten student. They absolutely love it. They bring their bicycle to it, and we set up a course that's it's like a roadway, and it's got crosswalks and stoplights and stop signs and stuff like that. And they go through and they have to drive around, stopping and going and everything else.
I don't know who loves it more, the kids or the police officers.
Yeah.
Those officers love it.
It's fun.
Yeah, I've seen videos.
It's fun.
Yeah,
And
it's
it's in
fun.
the armory, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe we're moving it this year to one of the schools.
That's what.
So it won't be at the armory this year. But. Yes, sir.
Shifting gears, what is your perspective on the red light cameras?
Red light cameras, I don't support the effort personally. We do not have any in the city of Piqua, and there's no discussion to get those. I do believe they have a value, and I would say that some of the cameras that I've seen in the Dayton downtown area may be of value for safety reasons. But there are communities that have made it bad for everybody because they use it as a source of income. And I don't support it if that's your intention, at all. But if it does help with, again, the ones in Dayton, I've been reading some articles about that in the past, that when the law made it, well, they basically put a moratorium on it to say, hey, you can't use these anymore. The intersections that Dayton had them at, the rate of accidents increased dramatically immediately after shutting them down. So they definitely had a value down there. But again, there's some small communities that I'm aware of, based off these studies, to where they might have 2 red lights in the entire town, and it's just a source of income. So that's the wrong reason to have it.
What is your highest category of traffic violations?
I think hands down it would probably be speeding, would be the biggest issue that you have. And you know that, I mean, there's a number of factors that go into that. These cars that they're building today are so comfortable, and you don't realize, you honestly sometimes don't realize how fast you're driving them. But there's also, everybody's in a hurry today, so going places. So by far and away, speed is the biggest issue. And after that, I think you're looking at, and he kind of touched on it there, just driver distraction. Whether it be because of a cell phone device or music or what it is, people are just not paying attention. They're talking to somebody beside them. They're on their radios, or you know, even with the cars now, they got the little consoles where you can push buttons and do all that neat stuff. So driver distraction causes a lot of that. So it's.
Where does red light stop sign runners fit into your picture?
I think you're probably getting down to 3rd or 4th, probably, as far as the number of frequency. Now, I will say, I won't say that that's not a bigger issue than speeding. It's a tougher issue for us to enforce because we can't be at every red light and every intersection all the time. But as we're driving around, if a car's coming at us at speed, and it's easy enough to enforce that violation. So there's just not as many opportunities to enforce those violations because you have to physically be there.
Some time back, I had seen, just coming into town, within about a 5 or 10 minute period, 3 violations of that on the west side of town. It's a very serious issue with myself. My oldest brother was killed by a red light runner.
Right.
So I guess, you know, if a relative of a department head or down at City Hall, would then it become more of a focus of enforcing.
Well, I may have misunderstood your initial question. I thought you were basing that off of the ranking based off of the frequency of citations being issued. I certainly wasn't putting a value on it in terms of seriousness of the violation, because the reality is, if you want to talk about the seriousness of a violation, a red light stop sign is probably the highest, because I can speed up and down Main Street all day long and never hit a car, but 9 times out of 10 you run a red light or a stop sign, you're probably going to tag somebody. So, so again, I misunderstood your question here as far as what you were asking.
There was on the evening news, I forget whether it was last evening or Monday evening, there was a news report down in the Dayton area, a semi running a red light and hitting a school bus.
Right, yeah.
So to me, it's a very serious
Oh, absolutely.
issue that you know, my oldest brother was killed by.
Right, yeah. No, I understand what you're saying. Again, I wasn't putting a level of how serious the offense is. It's just, again, I thought you were talking about frequency. But any offense that is likely to cause an accident is something that we focus on in the community. So, yeah.
Understand that the state legislature is looking at making a distracted driving a more serious offense, and for lack of a better word, a primary offense.
Right,
You
yes.
can stop them if you see it. You don't have to be investigating
Yeah.
something else.
Yeah, right now it's a secondary offense, like a seatbelt is. Well, at least for 18 and older. If an 18-year person or older, and of course we have to be able to judge whether they're, what age they are. But if they're 18 and older and they're texting or doing something on their phone, it's illegal but we can't stop them for that reason only. If they go left of center, or they're speeding, or some other traffic offense occurs, then we can stop them for that and cite them for the distracted driver. Somebody under 18, though, is a primary offense, so. But yes, they are looking into making that a primary offense to stop traffic violation.
Would that be more work for you?
I don't think so. I mean, hopefully it makes people quit, but, you know, it's pretty easy. Now, one thing with cell phones, you're not allowed to text or Facebook or get on social media, but you are allowed to use your GPS, but you're supposed to program before you take off, and if you have to click a button to do whatever, that's legal. But it's difficult for us to prove what you were doing on that phone when we stop you, because anybody that knows what the law says is going to say, oh, I was doing my GPS. Well, how am I going to prove them wrong? I mean, we can get search, if it's a serious, like an accident, we can request their records from their cell phone provider and find out what they were doing on there, but those are pretty severe situations when you do that. So, yes, sir.
3 questions. The easiest one, what kind of weapon are you carrying?
Glock 17, 9mm is what the department issued weapon is.
Okay. And 2 recent incidents you had in town, the one on High Street, that drug thing that you condemned the house, or where that is.
The city did.
Now, who pays for all that? Or who, does the landlord pay for that, or?
I guess.
The one on High Street?
Yeah, but what part of it are you talking about they pay for? See, we had information that there was drug dealing and drug abuse going on in that house.
Yeah.
We did our normal investigation, and we got probable cause, got a search warrant. We went in there, we recovered a significant amount of crystal meth from that house. So a number of charges were filed on the people that were inside the house. And at that point, when the officers went in, they found it was unlivable. So then we contacted the health department, and they came in and condemned it. So it's up to the landlord from that point to pay for everything to clean up and get it livable again to where it can be leased out or sold. So that would be
you won't demolish it then, or?
well, that's not up to us to do.
Okay.
If the house is ultimately condemned and the property owner wants to have it torn down, they have to pay to do that. The city doesn't do that. And we don't order them to do that. That's their responsibility.
Okay. And then the other incident you had here, I think you had a homicide here in the last week or 10 days. What's that all about? Or are you allowed to say?
Yeah, I can't go into any detail on that. That's still under investigation. And at this point, they're pretty close to wrapping it up, and then everything will be presented to the prosecutor's office for consideration of charges. I can say that there is no threat to the community at large. The shooter and the victim were associates. They knew each other, and they were both, the shooter was in the house at the time that the officers arrived. So nobody ran from the scene and is at large. So again, it's not a threat to the community as a whole. It was an isolated incident that occurred at that residence. So.
When you have somebody or investigate people suspect a drug house, a drug deal, we had a very tragic situation in Dayton a few months back with members of DEA, as we understand it. Do your people, or do you ever encounter I don't like to use the word opportunity, but the situation that necessitates calling in DEA for assistance?
Yes and no. We have a partnership with the DEA. We have a partnership with Sydney Police Department, and we utilize both those agencies anytime that it's an opportunity to assist us, yes. So I can't get into all the details of that. Some of that is information you don't really want out there. But yes, we have a partnership with the DEA and other agencies. Miami County Sheriff's Department was in Piqua yesterday with a search warrant on East Main Street. It was a narcotic search warrant. We were previously investigating those individuals, not just for drug use, but for a robbery. And in the course of doing that investigation, we discovered that the Sheriff's Department already had an investigation going on with them, so we just stepped away and let them do it. There's no reason for 2 agencies to do the same investigation. So that's an example of that. And just like with the meth house on High Street, a methamphetamine lab is a very toxic and very dangerous environment in terms of it could explode as well as the chemicals could cause harm to anybody that's in the house. If we as a police department attempted to clean that mess up, and then we discovered after beginning that process that we had a meth lab, we are solely responsible for taking care of that entire scene, which requires hazmat and everything else. Could cost tens of thousands of dollars in that situation. We can call BCI, the Bureau of Criminal Investigations down in London. They will send a crew up to clean the scene up, and it doesn't cost us a dime. And that's what we did in that situation. We found a cooler that had some chemicals in it that was suspected to be involved in manufacturing meth, and we called BCI. They came up, cleaned it up. All that stuff is at the lab. We're waiting for results back to determine, excuse me, what charges have been filed. But yeah, to answer your question, we use all those agencies for assistance when we can.
Steve, if I'm thinking about the same place, location Steve's talking about, last I recall, there was a big dumpster out there in front of it that they drove out the house into.
Yeah, the landlord, he's the one that put the dumpster there, and he actually approached the city saying that he may have needed a second one because of the amount of trash that was inside that building. So yeah, it was a mess, to say the least.
I came down into that area the day it was going down, and of course it was blocked off.
Yeah. Still active at that point. Because when we have BCI come up, they responded as quickly as they can, but you don't know where they're going to be. And that day the guy was in Cincinnati, so he had to drive up here. It didn't take him very long, so he must have been on the north side, but we have to secure the area until they get here, so it takes time.
Do you have much contact with ICE, with illegal immigration?
We have not to date. We've not had any involvement with them whatsoever. But I mean, I don't know what the future could hold, but we haven't to date. We haven't had a need.
We see in the police reports, not only for Piqua, but for Troy, but for his paper,
Sure.
I think 3 or 4 OBs in Troy, we see where there may be an OB case here, and they're transported to a hospital for treatment. Then, is that the end of your involvement in that, or is that still an active follow-up or an active situation that you're involved in?
Sometimes we are done at that point. It depends on what we find when we get to the scene. If there's obviously drug abuse taking place and it's present, then we collect the evidence and then we'll charge that individual. Obviously, if they survive, we'll end up filing charges on them. But typically what happens is they buy their drugs somewhere else and they either use it on the way home or they use it when they get home, so there is no evidence. So all you have is a person that's overdosed, they go to the hospital. Now, that's where I was talking about earlier with our HEART program, we have that our heroin education training where our response team, where we go to those individuals and provide them with literature about where they can seek help, whether it be a nonprofit, faith-based, Miami County Recovery Council, or some other agency that can help with detox. We provide that to them and encourage them to get help. So, and then at that point, if they say no, we can't force them into that. The courts can at some point if they get into the courts, but that could be a long time down the road. So,
Is that Sunrise Drug Center about to open, or?
I don't know the exact date. I've probably been told a million times, but we have Wilson Hospital has a place out here now, and then Sunrise, and then there's a third drug abuse treatment
One on
center.
High Street there.
Yeah, that's coming in quick too. So.
Yeah, what, is that a group of manufacturers or something going together to putting that up?
Just 3 private companies that recognize the problem in Miami County, and they're coming in to help with whatever they can.
Did you mean Wilson Hospital or Kettering?
I believe Wilson Hospital. They're affiliated with Wilson Hospital. It's a drug treatment center that's coming in. I don't have the names of the locations with me here, I wasn't ready for that, but Sunrise is one, and these other two are coming in soon, so.
Rick, on behalf of the Piqua Police Club, we always try to give you something to remember us by. We really appreciate all the information today.
Appreciate coming in, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Without
Oh,
It's right next to that.
by the pet pad.
Yes, and Johnson lived in that house, and they raised, and
What was saying that right there?
yeah.
Yeah, either 8% or bond.